You put on the headset. It fits perfectly. A sleek black helmet, smooth and cool against your temples, wrapping around your skull like it was made just for you. The Nerve Gear, they called it. The most advanced gaming console ever created. Full dive virtual reality. Your entire nervous system hijacked, rerouted, replaced. One moment you are lying in your bedroom, the next you open your eyes inside another world entirely. And it is beautiful. The sky is a deep, impossible blue. The stone beneath your feet is solid. You can feel the wind. You can smell pine trees somewhere far below, in a world so vast it seems impossible it came from a server. Aincrad, a floating castle in the sky, 100 floors stacked on top of each other, each one a different world, a different ecosystem, a different danger. 100 floors between you and freedom. Except you do not know that yet. That comes a few minutes later. When 10,000 players log in on launch day, November 6th, 2022, and a robed figure appears in the sky. His name is Akihiko Kayaba. He built all of this, and he has something to tell you. You cannot log out, you cannot remove the headset, and if someone on the outside tries to forcibly remove it, the nerve gear will emit a burst of microwave radiation directly into your brain. You will die in the real world. There is only one way out. Reach the top floor. Beat the game. Clear all 100 floors. Fail, and your character dies. And so do you. 10,000 people are now trapped. You are one of them. Let us think about what that actually means. Not as an anime plot, as a scenario, as a real experience. What would it feel like to wake up inside Sword Art Online? What would the first hour be like? The first week? What decisions would define whether you survived or became one of the thousands who never made it home? Because 4,000 people did not make it home. By the time the game ended, 2 years later, 4,000 players were dead. That is a number worth sitting with. 4,000 people who put on a headset to play a game and never took it off. So, what do? The first thing that hits you is panic. Not yours necessarily, everyone else's. 10,000 people realizing at the same moment that the log out button is gone. You can hear it spreading through the town of beginnings, the starting city on the first floor. People crying, people screaming, people sitting down on the stone cobblestones and refusing to move. The noise is overwhelming. The fear is contagious. And contagion, in a psychological sense, is a real force. Research by Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler, published in the British Medical Journal, demonstrated that emotional states spread through social networks the way viruses do. You catch fear from the people around you. Standing in a crowd of 10,000 terrified people, you would feel it too. Your hands shaking even though they are not your real hands. That is the first thing you have to survive. Not a monster. Yourself. The players who made it furthest in Aincrad were the ones who got moving quickly, who looked at the situation and rather than collapsing under the weight of it, started asking practical questions. What do I know? What can I do right now? What is the most dangerous thing and how do I avoid it? In the world of SAO, the most dangerous early choice was this. Do you join a group or do you go it alone? It sounds obvious. Join a group. There is safety in numbers. But the math inside Aincrad was crueler than that. When you die in this game, your health bar hits 0 and your body dissolves into blue light. No second chances. No respawn. In a world like that, the people around you are not just allies. They are also liabilities. Someone who makes a mistake in battle draws aggro onto your whole party. Someone who panics and runs pulls enemies into a corridor where you cannot retreat. Someone who trusts the wrong player in a guild gets their equipment stolen, or worse, gets led into a player-killing ambush in a field outside the safe zones. In SAO, the safe zones were the towns. Step outside and the rules of the game applied. People could hurt you there. This is where the distinction between solo players and guild players becomes fascinating. A solo player called a beater, part beta tester, part cheater, that was the slur, was someone who had practiced before launch, knew the maps, knew the traps. Kirito, the central figure of the Aincrad arc, chose this path early. He had been a beta tester. He knew things others did not. And he knew that the gap between that knowledge and everyone else's could get people killed if they trusted him too much. What would you choose? If you had no prior knowledge of the game, the guild system was probably smarter in the early floors. Shared information, shared supplies, splitting the psychological weight of surviving a world that wanted you dead. But guilds came with their own catastrophes, the Moonlit Black Cats. A small guild, inexperienced, good-hearted. They advanced steadily until they walked into a trapped room on a floor they were not ready for. A single trigger. A door sealed behind them. Monsters spawning without pause. In minutes, every member of that guild was dead. The only survivor was the player who had not been in the room, who had stepped outside for reasons no one could have predicted would save his life. Survival in Aincrad was often that arbitrary, not always skill, sometimes timing, sometimes the fact that you happened to be standing one room to the left when the trap triggered. But skill mattered enormously too, because at the core of Aincrad was a system called the sword skill, pre-programmed combat techniques that, once initiated, moved your body automatically through a sequence of attacks. You could feel it happening, your arm locked into the motion, guided by the game's physics, faster and more powerful than anything you could do manually, but vulnerable. At the end of a sword skill, there was a brief moment of paralysis, a recovery window. If an enemy hit you in that window, you took massive damage. Learning to manage that, to chain skills without getting caught in recovery, to read enemy patterns well enough to know when to strike and when to hold back, that was the difference between a player who cleared floors and a player who did not. This is worth thinking about because it maps onto something real about how human beings handle sustained high-stakes environments. Psychologists studying combat veterans, rescue workers, and survivors of prolonged crises have found a consistent pattern. The people who adapt most successfully are not the ones who feel no fear. They are the ones who develop routines, who create predictability inside chaos, who break an overwhelming situation into smaller, manageable problems. Clean your equipment, check your maps, log your enemy patterns in a notebook. These habits are not exciting. They feel mundane against the backdrop of a death game, but they are what keeps a human mind from fracturing under the pressure of sustained survival. By the middle floors of Aincrad, a front line had formed. The most skilled, most experienced players grinding upward through the castle, floor by floor. Each floor had a labyrinth leading to a boss room. Each boss room was a battle that could last hours and kill players who made a single mistake. The players on the front line were not ordinary. They were people who had chosen, consciously, to put themselves between the other 9,000 survivors and the thing trying to kill them. Some for glory, some because they believed it was the only way to get home, some because they had already lost people and had nothing left to be afraid of. And here is where the story becomes genuinely strange, because the higher they climbed, the more they began to forget what life outside was like. Not forget exactly. More like it stopped feeling real. Your body in the real world was lying in a bed, fed through a tube, muscles atrophying, while your mind was here, building a house on the 22nd floor, eating food that had simulated taste and texture, feeling wind that was indistinguishable from real wind, falling in love with someone who existed only inside a server. Is that less real? Philosophers have argued about the nature of experience for centuries. If you feel something, truly feel it, does the substrate it runs on change its meaning? Kirito and Asuna, the two central players of the Aincrad arc, chose to get married inside the game. They chose to build a life, to find rest, to have something worth protecting inside a world trying to kill them. That choice is not naive. It is deeply human. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz, wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, is most often sustained not by strength alone, but by having something to live for. A purpose, a person, a future worth reaching. They had each other. On the 75th floor, the truth revealed itself. The boss of that floor was a player. Heathcliff, leader of the Knights of the Blood Oath, the most powerful guild in Aincrad, the man who had rallied the frontliners, organized the assault strategies, maintained order in a world without law. He was Akihiko Kayaba himself, the creator. He had been playing alongside them the entire time, hiding behind an unbeatable health bar, watching what he had built. He revealed himself and he made an offer. Fight me. If you win, the game ends. Every player goes free. Kirito fought him, and in the final moments of that battle, the math was clear. Kirito's health bar was empty. He was technically dead. But there is a lag, a brief window between when damage registers and when the system processes it. In that window, with the last of something that might have been will or love or pure human refusal to stop, he landed the final blow. The game ended. The floors began to collapse. 10,000 players who were still alive began waking up in hospital beds and living rooms and wherever their bodies had been kept for 2 years, blinking at a world that had continued without them. You put on the headset. You thought you were going to play a game. What you got instead was 2 years of the most real thing you ever lived through. And the question that will follow you for the rest of your life is not whether it was real. You know it was real. You felt every second of it. The question is what you do now, with a life that you earned the hard way, inside a castle that no longer exists, fighting for a sky you can still remember perfectly, even now, even here, standing in a world that never had to fight for you at all.